poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson. Today's guest on CPG is a man after my own heart who's always marched to the beat of his own drummer. He's a play-by-play anchor for the World Series of Poker and host of Crush Live Poker's podcast, Under the Gun, the one and only David Tuchman. If there's a sport people play in the world, there's a good chance Tuch's covered it. From the NFL to NASCAR to poker, while bouncing around from New York to LA to London, the man has seen and covered it all. In today's very special episode with Tuch, we're going to dive deep into how he stumbled into the world of poker and how his background in theater and journalism uniquely positioned him to take advantage of an incredible early opportunity, hosting and commenting live at the bike from the very start. You're going to learn about Tuch's professional hockey aspirations and what it was like being a prop player at the bike in the good old days with one of his best friends in the world, former CPG guest, the founder of CrushLivePoker.com, Bart Hanson. So now, without any further ado, I bring to you the host of Under the Gun and founder of TuchOnSports.com, the one and only David Tuchman. Mr. Tuchman, how are you, sir?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Just expressing the FOMO that I have for missing out on the WSOP this year and feeling a little bit of excitement to get there next year.
Yeah, I haven't missed a World Series in quite some time. I want to say that I have not missed a World Series in its entirety in probably like 14 years.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't really miss it.
Right.
I haven't ever missed it, but this is the first time I'm actually missing it because I know, through the podcast, just so many people that are there, right? It's like, it's this one time where all of the people that I've met and networked with through this venture are all concentrated in like the same place, which is just kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, I imagine, especially considering, if you're a cash game player and you normally see these people on a regular basis, but you haven't seen them over the last 18 months because of the pandemic, I would imagine at least it's like, even if you're not going to play tournaments, it's still a great excuse just to kind of see some people that you like.
Well, I'm a shut-in. So, I'm a shut-in and an anonymous cash game player. So like before I started the podcast like 2 years ago, I didn't know tons of people in the poker world and shamefully ignorant of all tournament players and results. I did not keep up with anything over the past decade. And then through, close to 200 episodes, I've just met so many people and made so many connections and done so many interviews and had conversations like this that, yeah, now I know a lot of people. I didn't know a lot of people 2 years ago. And now there's just like tons of people that I know that are all milling around in the same spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's by the way, you're no longer anonymous.
I guess I know that kind of halfway. Yeah. I haven't gone anywhere. That's the thing. I just have a conversation with one person, then I release it into the world, and then that's it. So I haven't actually gone to play poker because of the pandemic. Really,
I get it. Yeah, but you're still not anonymous. I mean, people know who you are now, at least, which is
yeah, I tell my kids, I'm trying to be the most famous Brad Wilson. Like if I can knock that out, then achievement unlocked. There's actually a lot of high achieving Brad Wilsons out in the world.
I was gonna say, like, that's got to be hard because Brad Wilson. I mean, that's like Joseph. I mean, that's a fairly common name. Wilson, first of all, very common last name, and then Brad is not. I mean, don't take it the wrong way, but we're not breaking boundaries with your first name either. Apparently I've quickly Googled. So there's a Brad Guitar Wilson, songwriter from California. That's not you. No. There's a politician, not you. There's a photographer, not you. There's a lot of Brad Wilsons. I will tell you that you becoming the most famous Brad Wilson is far more difficult than most people. Like, certainly more difficult than me being the most famous David Tuchman.
Yeah, not a ton of David Tuchmans. You have the front page when I was doing my research for this conversation. You got the front page locked down. Like, I'm firmly on page 2. Need to get my SEO guys to work on ranking me up in the Google searches.
Or you can just change your name.
Oh, I could.
Yeah.
Maybe Brain Fuel Wilson. What about that?
Yeah, I think we could do. I mean, on the fly, that's not bad, but I think we can do better.
If I'm going to change my name, I at least want to get paid.
Yeah, you should get paid if you're going to change your name. You're right. That's a good point. Well, we can brainstorm.
Yeah,
and we can come up with something really, really good. I mean, listen, there is a Brad Guitar Wilson.
That's their middle name, Guitar.
That's what he's called. It's a homepage of Brad Guitar Wilson, a songwriter, artist from California. Brad Wilson has a soulful, contemporary sound. I mean, I just feel like that's kind of dumb. Like, if you are a songwriter, you don't need, like, I mean, if you're any good, you don't need to make your middle name Guitar. Like, you're not gonna, you know what I mean? You wouldn't, like, you're not gonna see, like, Peyton Football Manning.
Yeah, Brad Chiprack Wilson.
Yeah, just like, I don't know, be more creative than that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, let's circle back to you, Tuchman.
Yes.
Let's talk about, typically starting out this show, first time guest. I want to know your story of how you entered the world of poker. What's that look like?
I always played. My dad played and my grandparents played. And I remember my dad playing when I was a little kid. He would play, they would have poker night. And I love poker night because poker night meant my mom got a lot of snacks. And my dad would let me sit there and watch, and I'd watch them play and everything. And then I was intrigued. Like, oh, here's a fun game. Money is being changed and there's snacks. So this is awesome. And then I remember we used to go away every Christmas and New Year's. We'd go away to this very Dirty Dancing-esque type resort.
What do you mean by that? Dirty Dancing-esque?
Like the Catskills, like dirty, like the resort and Dirty Dancing was.
Kind of. You see, I'm older, but Dirty Dancing is just maybe 5 years past me.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, there's like 21-year-old girls who know what Dirty Dancing is. Anyway, the movie Dirty Dancing.
I'm not a 21-year-old girl, though. That's a problem.
You're right. Okay, so you're not a 21-year-old girl.
Nobody puts baby in the corner. That's what I know about Dirty Dancing.
Okay, so so it's iconic enough that you know a quote from it.
I do.
There's a Dirty Dancing is obviously it's a movie. Many of you probably know it. It's there's a kind of a resort there. It's a summer resort, but those places also have winter resorts. And it was up in the Catskills, which is like 2 hours north of New York City. And we would go there. I would play a hockey tournament, and then after that, we'd spend New Year's there. And my dad would play poker. And next to the poker room, there was an arcade. And all the dads would give their kids a roll of quarters, $10 roll of quarters, and go, okay, go play video games. This is at night, so we can. So basically, here's a $10 roll of quarters. Leave me the fuck alone, kid. Can I say that word on this?
Oh yeah, you can.
Okay. Leave me alone. Go do that. We're playing poker. Well, I wanted to sit and watch because I mean, I think at the time I had no idea what my dad was playing, but looking back and now knowing, my dad was probably playing 10, 20 stud.
Yeah.
And, with his buddies, because I saw $10 bills and $20 bills. So that makes sense. They always put cash, though. It was just cash, which is pretty crazy when I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just enthralled by the game to the point where I convinced the other kids to start playing poker with me with their roll of quarters.
So you started like a little micro game.
Yeah. And I never needed another quarter again because I just kept winning. I watched my dad. I was like, oh, if I don't play every single hand and I just play some of the better ones, I'm probably going to win. Anyway, that kind of morphed into me playing, poker with my buddies and playing home games with like my high school friends and stuff like that. And, when I first started playing, it wasn't Hold'em. It was, we played all sorts of weird games like Chicago and Black Mariah and Follow the Queen and you name it. We just invent games. And in fact,
what's the timeline here? Like, what year is this?
Man, like this is probably like 1990-ish.
Okay, 1990.
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, so no Hold'em boom.
No, this is
way far back.
This is before Rounders. This is before Rounders, before Chris Moneymaker, all that stuff. But I do remember, playing in the early 90s with my buddies and somebody kind of introducing games where we had a community board, like a shared board, like we do it obviously in PLO and Hold'em now. And I remember that was like, I was like, wait, so we're all kind of confused by it. Like, I'm like, so you're giving me cards, you get your cards, and we all share these cards in the middle? That seems weird. Okay. So we started playing those kind of games. And we just kind of played with that. Like they would make shapes and be like, oh, well, you can use two from this line and one from this line, or one from this line and two from this line, but not three from one line, and it would just, we'd play all these weird different games with that. And that was kind of how I got my poker go. And like in college, I played a ton, but this is still right before the internet really took off. And it was right before the internet really took off. And it was before online poker was a thing. It was before Rounders. So even then, I would play like heads up with the guy across my hall. We would just play heads up like draw poker, 5-card draw. And I remember, winning a lot of money for college kids.
Yeah.
I was naturally just pretty good at it.
Where do you think that comes from? The naturally being pretty good at it. I mean, just... Did you think about the strategy away from the game? Like, how did you think about poker?
I would say it's kind of threefold. Number one, yeah, I'm ridiculously anal. So if there's a game that I was playing, I would literally spend hours devising a plan on how to play it. So there was a game that I grew up playing called Axis and Allies. I don't know if you know it.
I do.
Okay. So I would literally take a pad of paper and write out strategies for each country, and like, okay, what's an ideal strategy if you're Japan? What's an ideal strategy if you're Russia? So forth and so on. And I just wanted to be good at these games. So I always tried to think like, okay, what would I do for that? So I think that was, first off, that was kind of in my DNA.
Same.
And I'm really competitive. So that was part of it. And I wanted to win. So like if we played, I was like, okay, I'm going to, I want to do that. I was always good at math. I was really, really good at math from an early age. I didn't have to study at all. And I would take like, the math test or math, like the state regencies, and I was scoring 99 percentile. So that's part of it. And then I think something that as I've gotten older, but it probably was there when I was younger as well, as I think I have a really good ability to read the room and to understand how people perceive me, which I think lends to why I'm probably a far better live poker player than I am online.
What's the major benefit of understanding how people perceive you?
Away from the poker table, I think it's huge just because, you get a sense of, when you're annoying somebody, when you should shut up, where you are. If a girl is flirting with you when I was single, it was like, okay, you just get a sense of like how they feel toward you. At the poker player, I think it's invaluable because if you understand, I think too many poker players make the mistake of thinking this is my image. I haven't played a hand all night, so my image is squeaky tight. Like I read these forums and they're like, okay, well, image is this. And I never thought it was that simple because I feel like your image might be that to that player, but what's your image to that player over there or to the woman in seat 2? How does each person think about you? And as I played and I kind of realized, I was like, wow, I'm playing in some players. Like I literally played in one session where one guy thought I was a complete lag and one guy was thinking about folding the top of his range because he was like, fuck, Tuch, if you weren't such a nit, I would never even think about making this fold. And I was like, wow, okay, hold on a second. I'm not different, but I have players thinking about me in different ways.
Sure.
So for me, it was always a matter of like, if I understand how somebody perceives me, then I can exploit that.
Yeah. And it's very natural too, because I think that, say, you run good against someone, right? Like over the course of an hour and you like 3 or 4 bet them 3 or 4 times. Like they're going to get emotionally compromised, most likely. They're going to get frustrated. And then they're going to make a story as to why they're feeling so frustrated. And that story is going to be that you're running over them, right? Whereas a player, 3 to your left, you haven't 3-bet them all night, and then you 3-bet them and they're like, whoa, this dude's really tight, right? It's just like, it's a matter of what each individual person is experiencing at the poker table, and then, understanding how they think of you and how that affects what your strategy ought to be against those specific players.
Yeah, I mean, I remember growing up and watching like Harrington, and wondering, how did this guy make how did he win the championship? How did he make back-to-back final tables? And you start realizing you're like, wow, he has a really amazing understanding of how he is perceived, and he's able to exploit it. Not a lot, but every once in a while he does that. I remember playing a silly heads-up match. Bart Hanson and I did a heads-up match for Joe Seabach and Gavin Smith. And at the time, I knew Gavin, but Gavin is this, gregarious, loud, drinking poker player. And I thought, okay, well, he's going to be this crazy lag, right? And he was the furthest thing from it. I mean, he's a complete nit.
Mm-hmm.
But, by the time I kind of realized that,
it's too late.
it was already a 3-1 chip deficit to him.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that was always kind of part of who I am. And I think as I've gotten older, I've just been able to use it more.
Yeah.
And I think at the poker table, like I said, I think at the poker table, it's really invaluable. I remember playing the main event many years ago, and I was sitting at a table with like Antonio Esfandiari. And at this point, I think I was, especially when at the World Series of Poker, I was more the commentator guy and less the cash game player. So I was getting some like cold 4-bets through in spots that I was like, wow, these are just, and I remember talking about it. I was like, this just keeps working. Why does this keep working? It's amazing, But then I go back to LA, and, I had to completely change my game against certain players, because in LA, I was known as a cash game player, and, I was certainly wasn't the tightest player at the table.
Sure. And I think there's also, I think human beings want to apply like rigid labels to other humans and say like, oh, this is my image because I have folded 30 hands in a row. Everyone thinks that I am tight. Like, it's that robotic. And I found, and I recently listened to a podcast. It was a Sam Harris it was on nonverbal communication. I can't remember who the guest was, but basically it was about how we pick things up subconsciously through body movement, and how it's like very reliable. Like, if you're explaining directions to someone, you use your hands to express and show people and point. And like, most people read the body more than they actually read the words that you're saying. And I found that like there are players that play like super nits for like 2 hours, and then all of a sudden I'm in a pot against them, and it's like I know that they're going to go off and just like a rocket, and there's no reason for me to know that other than I just feel it, and then they do. And the only conclusion that I'm able to come to is that subconsciously I'm reading some nonverbal data points that are pinging my brain that are like, yeah, this guy's about to go off for whatever reason, and sometimes it seems like it's just out of the blue. They just blow up. It's hard to describe. And yet it's happened to me hundreds of times.
Yeah. I've talked about this on my own podcast a million times where, let's say I'm raising a ton in the cutoff with a button, and I just keep attacking somebody's blind, and you can just feel it. It is this kind of palpable thing where you can feel at some point they're going to explode, and they're going to be like, nope, that's it. You crossed the line, and they're going to try to make a stand. And I love that, because that's one of these points. Like, yeah, okay. So if they time it right, yeah, they'll catch me. But when they time it wrong, I'm going to catch them, and it's going to be a lot worse for them.
Yeah. Then they walk away from the table going like, how did you call me down? How did you do that? Like, I haven't done anything in 4 hours. And
right.
You're just, I don't know. I just felt like you didn't have it that time.
Yeah, I got lucky. I just got lucky. I mean, me, I'm a fish. But I think, I think what you said in terms of, nonverbal cues and body language, I have 6 pets and 2 kids. And I think it's more apparent now that because I see it. When you have kids and you see how they react to just literally, the way I turn and look at them sometimes, and suddenly my boys know I'm being serious.
Mm-hmm.
And you start kind of looking at that going, wow, it's innate. It is in us all. And I think a lot of times people they don't open themselves up to allowing all of that information inside. They close off to it. And I'm with you 100%. I think there's so much that you can be given away if you allow it to. I think sometimes people take it too far and then they go, well, this is why you should always trust your first instinct. And I go, there's something to that. But I go, there's also a lot to, hey, we've put a lot of work in the game. There's nothing wrong with taking 20 seconds here and actually thinking through something and thinking through, okay, what's my range? What's my opponent's range? What does this look like? And then you can couple that with the body language and what your subconscious might be telling you. But I have had many times where I'm like, I just don't believe you. I don't know why. I just don't believe you right now. And I'm not always right, but I think I'm right enough where when I'm getting 3 or 4 to 1, I'm certainly making profitable calls in those spots.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the pot odds model, right? Like even if we're fairly certain and we're getting 3 to 1, well, we only have to be right more than 25% of the time. And so, okay, like we can afford to be wrong quite often. Because pot odds kind of protects us. And right. It's sometimes hard to discern what is like an intuitive read like that. And then also maybe what your emotions are telling you, or just, you're kind of getting tricked by yourself because maybe you want to call. And so you have this confirmation bias of trying to find some reason to do it. So parsing through that can be a little bit difficult and tricky.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest things. And I think for a lot of people, but for me, and I can't speak for other people. For me, one of my biggest things is that when I do have a preconceived notion, when I'm emotionally invested, when I'm looking for evidence to make one side the correct side, so to speak, I think that's when I can run myself into trouble. What I try to do is really just kind of be like, okay, like if anything, empty my mind of everything and really be open to what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Forget about the past and just kind of like focus on my opponent in this absolute moment. Not that my past experience with my opponent isn't relevant. It's just sometimes I do think that, going off what you just said, it can cloud your judgment and influence your decision.
For sure. And I think just for the listener, in making their way through the world, like understanding what confirmation bias is and the downside of it can save people lots of frustration, anxiety, save them from lots of misinformation campaigns and all sorts of things, because humans just have a tendency to I kind of get the feeling this is right. Now let's look up all the ways that this is supported on the interwebs. And then all of a sudden they spiral down into a black hole, and it can get it can get a little bit messy.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to your story. So you're battling, you're in college. You mentioned you're very competitive. So tell me about that, like being competitive growing up and what that means to you.
Oh, I was just incredible. I mean, I always played sports. I played hockey. I played hockey in college. So no matter what game I played, I just wanted to win. We used to play stickball, outside the school against a wall.
Why'd you want to win?
I don't know. What I mean. I think my dad was competitive, probably. Like my dad never let me win, so I had to actually beat him.
You gonna let your kids win?
I think there's a healthy balance there. I think you have to let your kids. I don't want to let my kids win, but I don't want to beat my kids into oblivion each time so they're no longer interested.
Yeah.
Dumb example, but I got a hockey bubble game. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, but it's like literally it's like foosball but hockey. Mm-hmm. There's a big bubble. It's famous. It's been around forever. Anyway, I grew up with one. I loved it. My wife bought it for me. I'm really good at it. I played it a million times as a kid. There's zero chance my kid could beat me right now if I tried. But if I beat my kid, 7-0 every single time, he's not going to play with me. Yeah. And selfishly, I want him to play with me. So, I've got to let him, so I'll play him 3 games and I'll beat him twice, and I'll let him kind of be competitive with me. So, I mean, for the people out there, they're like, oh, you never let your kids win. Don't let them ever win. I'm like, if you don't let your kids win everything, they're never going to play. Like, I mean, if you're teaching a 4-year-old how to play chess, I'm going to beat my kid in 5 moves every time.
You also, I think it probably creates like an unhealthy relationship to competitions, just destroying your kid every time, right? Because like winning becomes like the end all be all. I don't know. Well, I find, okay, if you would have asked me this when I was 21 years old, no chance. I'm smashing no matter what I do, I'm never letting anybody win. I'm going to play as hard as I possibly can. I'm not going to be a dick. I'm not going to flip a table if I lose, but I'm going to try hard. Now at 37, I do let people win in games, and especially I find that I let people win at things that they don't normally win at, and it means a lot to them, and that kind of gives me some sort of internal happiness as well, just knowing how much it matters to them to beat me at some silly thing. Maybe I'm just getting soft as I get older.
Yeah, maybe. And I'm probably a little bit of the same way. I mean, when I was a kid, I was incredibly competitive and I wanted to win, to the point where I also like competition. Like there are some board games out there, like, like Cards Against Humanity, stuff like that. Like my wife loves playing that. And I'm just kind of like, I don't know, so how do I win? She's like, well, you don't really win. I'm like, oh, so why are we playing?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem. I don't think that's healthy. So,
not one for Candyland, Tuchman.
Right, I'll play Candyland. Candyland, you can win. What are you talking about?
Well, you can win, but there's no skill. Like you're just drawing cards and moving your little guy.
That's fine. I can still win though, and I try to win.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to have an element of skill. You just need to be able to declare somebody the winner at the end of this thing.
Right. But I guess as I'm getting older, though, I especially as I had kids, there are times where you realize, okay, it's okay not to humiliate your opponent. It's okay to let it be competitive, let them both have fun. And I think as you look at I was talking to DGAF about this, and I think if you look at like the private home game scene and private game scene, I think that actually plays into it as well. If you're a professional and you're being invited into these games and you're absolutely crushing your opponent, it's not the worst thing in the world to give them a little bit of negative EV action and maybe throw a little bit of the money back to them. It's not the worst thing in the world to, let's say it's the perfect spot for a 4-bet or a 3-bet, right? It's not maybe in this particular hand, you won't do it simply because you know what? I know these guys want to play a flop. They want to see flops. And I can't just relentlessly 3-bet them because I won't get invited anymore. They won't play with me. So I guess the same way, like I want my kid to play hockey with me. So I can't just pummel him every single time. I think you can kind of probably apply that to professional poker players playing in a private home game scene where, beat them. It's okay. But, let them play. Let them have fun too.
Or, I mean, when they have a good hand and you've got like an open ender or a flush draw, like just get it in, right? Like you just get it in. You've got 35% equity. You're gambling with them. You're not losing all that much in the grand scheme of things. But the number one rule, if you're in good games, is to stay in the good game, and getting kicked out of the good game is more detrimental to your well-being than, giving some action when you don't have the best of it every single time, or maybe calling it appropriately pre-flop, or like just being fun to play with. I think that's ultimately people just want to gamble, and they want to play against people who are willing to gamble with them. And when you do that, they'll invite you back. Like, you know what I mean?
I was actually just playing racquetball with a buddy of mine. I was in Vegas at the World Series, and kid I went to college with, that's one of my best friends in the whole world. Couldn't be prouder of him because, this is a guy who he's like 6'3", 6'4", and he ballooned up to like 375 pounds when he was in the midst of a divorce and he was having a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the guy just absolutely dedicated himself, got a trainer, and he's now at like 205 pounds and he's just in great shape. So we used to play racquetball when we were younger, and we started playing racquetball again because we couldn't play when he was 350 pounds because I'd be worried he'd die right on the court. I'm like, okay, I'm not, I know his kids, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm not going to be the one to tell your kids you died while you're playing racquetball with me. Sorry. But anyway, we were playing, and I've always been a better athlete than him. but we're playing racquetball. And the first game I beat him 15-4. And the second game we play, and I'm like, I kind of just like, I took it easy. Now, I will say, though, I was up like 14-11. I certainly didn't let him get points, but I didn't go like balls to the wall. Okay, I'm going to beat him here. He came back and he was beating me 15-14. And you have to win by 2. And that's when I was like, no, fuck this. Now I'm not losing. And I ended up beating him 17-15. And it was a good game. But that kind of thing where it's at least like, I mean, if I beat him every time 15-4, that's not fun. You know?
So I got my own racquetball story. So I was messing around and like just based on natural athletic ability, I could beat most of my friends.
Right.
And then one of my friends like played racquetball in college and like at a high-ish level. Right. And so I'm like, okay, let's play. Like he just like hit the ball in the fucking corner every time. Like he just beat me like 15-0 and I could never get the ball out of the corner. And that was the last time I played racquetball.
That was it. You realize
that was the end of my racquetball experience, getting drilled in a way that was just totally hopeless over and over and over again.
Yeah. The big fish in a little pond syndrome. I mean, same thing with chess. Like I was a pretty good chess player. I'm decent. Like I'm not good by any stretch, but if I'm playing somebody that doesn't play chess or just knows chess, I'm going to crush them.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I started playing against people who actually like went to chess tournaments and like were studying chess, I'm like, oh, I suck at chess.
Yeah, you got no chance.
That's right. I think it's kind of the same way. It's like, yeah, you're athletic enough that you're going to beat all these people. But if somebody actually plays the game,
you're screwed.
Done. Right.
Yeah, you're toast. I guess it just goes to, I guess the point of this is that you want to play people around your skill level. That's when it's the most fun. It's never fun when you're just so absurdly better than somebody at something that they don't stand a chance. And the opposite is certainly not fun either.
Right. But I mean, as for the competitive part of it, though, I mean, I would say that being competitive is a really good thing in many ways because I think it does fuel you. At least it did for me.
Sure.
Because I wanted to win. And I realized that, well, if I want to win, and if I want to do well here, I have to work. And then I started trying to figure out, okay, how do I win this game? So whether it's Axis and Allies or chess or hockey or poker, it was, okay, how do I win?
Mm-hmm.
And, I would sit there and I remember when I first started, I'd sit there with a deck of cards on a bed and I would just kind of like play hands by myself against myself just to see,
Same. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I think it's a commonality that I think is innate in a lot of professional poker players or folks that play poker at a high level is like just some sort of inner desire to be the best you can be at something and an acceptance that you don't have the answers, but you're open to learning and you're open to growth. That's, to me, give me somebody like that. I can work with a human being that has those innate skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially, if I imagine if I gave you a student who probably never even played a lick of poker, but they had that personality, you could probably turn them into a better poker player than the person who's already like kind of mediocre.
Been playing 15 years. I have no doubt. Yeah. I was telling my wife this the other day. This is a little tangent I'm going on, but you know how cloning humans is like outlawed? I'm not sure why this is outlawed, but like I would love to have a clone of myself and raise myself. I would be the best fucking dad to myself. Like it would be incredible.
I don't know. I might be too hard on myself. I might really be too hard. I mean, I feel like
your limits. You know how you are, so you know what resonates with you.
I have 2 boys,
mm-hmm.
So you could make the argument that I'm kind of doing it already.
Yeah.
And I have to catch myself because I'm actually my kid's hockey coach.
Mm.
And sometimes I have to catch myself being harder on him than I am the rest of the kids.
How are you as a hockey coach? Are you yelling at the kids?
No, I'm a good coach. I think I'm a really good coach.
Oh, they're young. They're young still.
Yeah, no, but I think I coached when I was young,
mm-hmm.
and I always loved the game. And I kind of when I was a kid playing, I knew I wanted to coach.
Yeah.
And my rules are very easy, and the kids all know it. They can recite them. I go, number 1, let's have fun. Number 2, work hard, give everything you got. Number 3, listen to your coaches, and then we'll go off and have fun and be like, number 4 rule, have fun. Number 5 rule, have fun, and that's it. So that's all I just demand. Like, hard work, make sure you listen to your coaches, and have fun.
For sure. And but, the hard work is pretty imperative for any venture in life.
Yeah.
The decision to enter a hand is fundamental to poker strategy. Too tight, and they know what you have. Too loose, and you're easy to run over. Pre-flop Bootcamp from Chasing Poker Greatness is a comprehensive guide to locking down your pre-flop game and creating true range advantage. 8 days of guided training, over 60 optimal ranges, and access to a dedicated community of players that will push your pre-flop game from a place of weakness to your greatest strength. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. Available now.
John, I wanted to ask you why you decided to invest in a pre-flop bootcamp.
Everything that you had done with me to that point, or I had heard you do, had impressed me. I loved the podcast. I accidentally ended up in the Poker Power Hour and loved that. And then I took coaching, and then you recommended the boot camp. And at first I didn't think it was, something that would be that valuable. But I was like, everything else has been amazing. So I signed up, and then it just blew me away.
And what about boot camp blew you away?
Like, it started off slow. Like, I'm learning these ranges, and I'm not even understanding what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden, as I start to understand what we're doing with the 3 bets, the 4 bets, and all of a sudden it just kind of hit me. And I was like, oh my God, how do I not know this stuff? This is amazing. The more I studied them, I started to understand why they were constructed sometimes. Like, I'd be like, that's why that's like that. And that would lead to more revelations and just a better understanding of poker in general.
Do you have any interesting takeaways from your boot camp experience?
The most interesting thing about the boot camp, it's a pre-flop boot camp, but I feel like it's done as much for my post game as it did for my pre-game, just because I'm not in as many awkward and bad situations as I found myself in. When we were doing coaching before the boot camp, we couldn't get through 10, 15 minutes of tape without finding mistake after mistake. And then once we did the boot camp, it solved problems on the back end as well.
I know you've studied for 1,000 hours this year. How do you think boot camp compares to your other poker study?
Oh, it's crazy. The boot camp is probably the most important thing I've done all year out of everything. I would give anything to go back and to know that stuff 10 years ago. I can't imagine how successful I'd be right now if I had known that stuff. And I thought the boot camp was so valuable that I literally insisted you take more money from me and paid you more for the boot camp because I was blown away. I just thought the price was too cheap. And it's changed my game in ways that I can't even explain to you.
If you'd like to join the next round of Pre-Flop Bootcamp, which starts on the last Saturday of every month, head to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp to lock up your spot. One more time, that's chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. So you're in college. I know you aspire to play hockey at a high-ish level, right? Tell me about your hockey career, what happened with that, and then what eventually, led you into having a career in the poker world.
In poker, yeah. Poker, I didn't really grind in college per se, as you mentioned, just because I didn't have that opportunity. That there was no opportunity to grind, and I went to school in upstate New York, and there was just, I played poker with the guy across my hall. And once he was broke, I found somebody else to play with. And, luckily the next guy worked at the canteen where you could get sandwiches and drinks.
Mm-hmm.
So after he paid me a little bit of money, he just gave me food and drinks from the canteen.
Nice.
So that was cool. But yeah, poker, hockey, I've been playing hockey since I'm 3 years old. I love the game. I played in college. I played at a pretty high level. I don't know. I kind of knew I probably did not work hard enough to get to the level of hockey that I would have wanted to play.
How come?
I don't know. It's hard to work hard.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just like, putting the work in is hard. And I worked hard and I had a lot of passion and stuff. But I think for my skill level, for my athletic level, I would have had to work harder. Other people maybe get by with better athletic ability. Others would be worse. But for where I was, I would say that, if I were to quantify it, I probably reached 89% of where I could have been. Like, which is, I think, probably really good compared to most people.
Sure.
But, for me to make it as far as I'd wanted to make it, I would have had to tap into 102%.
Yeah. Get some juice. Get on the...
exactly. Something, right. Yeah. But I played in college and I love that. And, I actually messed around in this kind of D-level pro league for a little while, for a few months. It was kind of just fighting, and it was cool though. We got paid a few $100 here and there, and stayed in basically a frat house with a bunch of the hockey players. So, played hockey, got drunk, got in fights.
It's too bad you didn't make it to the NHL, because I had a student who told me he was in the NHL and told me that you talk about the best poker games in the world. Traveling around in the NHL, on the bus with those guys, those are the best games on the entire planet.
I would imagine so. I mean, we actually played a few games in our league, and then I when I was in London, I was already older then. I played with a league out there where we were sponsored. It was kind of cool. And we'd kind of do this fun little traveling spots here and there. That was always fun. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I wasn't good enough, and probably didn't work hard enough to go to the point I wanted to get to. I moved out to LA. I started coaching. Then I kind of got away from coaching and started doing other things. I was acting. I was doing some writing.
Acting? Tell me about the acting.
So I moved out to LA. I mean, I was a theater major in college. It was one of my majors. And I always liked acting. I acted in high school and stuff like that. And I came out to LA and I started doing some acting. So I had some experience in front of the camera. And I was always kind of comfortable there. And most actors out in LA, they get job as waiters or bartenders, which of course I did at one point or another. And then eventually I was like, wait, it would be really cool. I was playing poker a little bit here and there at Commerce. And I found out about this job that I had never heard about, being a prop. And I was like, wait, so you get paid to play poker? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
What year was this?
This was 2004.
2004. So right around Moneymaker.
Yeah. Well, poker had blown up now. Poker started, Rounders came out, and I'd already been playing a bunch. So when I first moved out here, in the late 90s, I was playing poker. I would wait tables, and then I would race down the Commerce with my tips, and I would play usually stud 8 or better. That was the game I would play. I had read one book on it, and I was like, okay. And the game was great. It was a 3-6 stud 8 or better game. And then once in a while, if I was winning, I would take the shot in the 20-40 game. But that was, oh my God, that was huge.
Was that the sequential jump, 3-6 to 20-40?
Yeah,
there's nothing in between.
There was nothing in between. It was 3-6 stud and then 20-40. that was a jump. And so I'd play that. So I loved poker and everything. And then I found out, fast forward a few years later, and I found out about propping, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And at this point I had discovered Hold'em already, limit Hold'em. So I was like, okay. And I got a job at the Bike, that's a casino here in LA, started propping.
How much you get paid to prop?
You got paid depending on what stakes you were willing to play. You got paid more or less. I got paid in the beginning, $25 an hour.
Damn.
But the way it worked, it would be $10 an hour wages and then $15 an hour tips back, rake back. So only $10 an hour was taxable.
Okay.
So your $15 an hour you got was just tax free.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you played a little higher, you could get 30 or 35 an hour. And you got health insurance.
Wow. That's not a bad deal.
Right. So I was looking at it going, I'm like, wow, okay. So 30 an hour, I can make 60,000 a year plus health insurance. And then you keep whatever you win. So
not a bad gig.
Yeah. So I started propping. I was propping Limit Hold'em. I was propping. They had a horse game that would run there. I was propping that. It was all limit games. And then this was Moneymaker had already happened. And that was when, like a couple of years later, this was, I'd say, 05, I started doing Live at the Bike, and No Limit Hold'em started taking off. And I remember talking to Bart, and Bart and I were chatting about this because we were both just Limit Hold'em props. And I was like, Bart, you wouldn't believe it. I was like, dude, this game is like, it's ridiculous. Like I'm still only risking like 2 stacks of yellow, which is $1,000, but I'm like, a good session, I'm winning 2,000-3,000. He's like, really? He's like, yeah. Because
Bart was working. Was he a bartender back then too?
He was bartending. He was bartending before that, actually. So it's kind of funny. I actually bartended at a place called Miyagi's on Sunset Boulevard, and a couple of years after, or maybe a year after, Bart bartended at a place called Saddle Ranch, which was owned by the same owners. This guy named Larry, who was a complete dick. I mean, the guy was a complete dick. I mean,
why was he a dick? What's a Larry story?
He just literally scream and berate his staff. He'd be like, sell more. I want more money. He had he was like this little Napoleon, he's just a complete asshole. And there were a number of times, and I actually got a really good section at Miyagi's because I was a good seller, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I was much younger then. And there were a couple of times where he'd start to rip into me, and I'd be like, stop, because I'm not going to take it. Go yell at somebody else. Because I'm not playing that fucking game. Okay. But yeah, so then Bart and I met in 2004 because I started propping already, and he was trying to get a job propping there. Then eventually got hired as a prop there, and he and I were propping together, Limit Hold'em basically, maybe stud 8 once in a while. And then we started Live at the Bike, and that's kind of when like No Limit Hold'em started to like take hand. And I was like, wait a second. So the first couple of years I was playing, I kind of call it like a professional apprenticeship almost. Like you're not like a true pro because you're being supported by the casino and you're getting paid, I think. But that was all I was doing, was playing poker at that point.
I mean,
and that's been,
if that's all you're doing, to me, that feels like a true pro. Like even if
but the casino
kickback.
Right. But I mean, but let's say, when I played Limit Hold'em, like 1 year playing Limit Hold'em, we would play 10, 20, 20, 40 basically is what the games I was playing a lot of. And I'd play, that was the limits. 10, 20, 20, 40 were generally the limits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like 1 year I made like $24,000. Yeah, I'm not going to live on $24,000 in LA. So if I wasn't making an additional 50 from the casino, I wasn't getting by.
Sure. That's fair. A
So
professional 10-20 limit Hold'em player. That's a tough life.
That's what I meant. So that's kind of where I was at. But then I started playing No Limit, and I was like, I was having like a $12,000 month, and I was like, holy fuck. Like, this is amazing, right?
They need you to prop in those games. It feels like those games are just going to get built up.
They didn't. I mean, the way the props worked were generally, we started games. If games got short, they'd throw us in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I had a good enough arrangement with the Live at the Bike that I was able to they were like, okay, you can work Live at the Bike. I guess I was providing them a service with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can prop, but you can prop whatever game you want and we won't move you.
Ooh. So
that was,
you could just play whatever game you want, basically.
Well, then suddenly, then I got to the point where I was like, I had no schedule. I was getting paid $25 an hour to play poker. I was like, okay, yeah, sign me up. Like, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing, and because I was already playing pretty high limit Hold'em, like I remember 1 year at the World Series, I was playing at the Bellagio. I was playing as high as like 8160 limit at this point. When No Limit kind of took hold, I just naturally I jumped right into 510. Like I never played 1-2 ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I played it since, like in a whatever game, but I jumped in right into a 510 deep stack game.
Yes, same here. Funny enough, I went from playing 510 limit to No Limit getting spread on one of those casinos to nowhere. And it was 510 No Limit. And so I was like, okay, I'll play that instead.
Cool.
And never went through the grind of battling in like the 1-2 games ever either. But I mean, what was the difference in the limit games and then transitioning to no limit? Like, was it more exciting? What was the feeling as a player back in 2004?
It was. I mean, for me at that point, it was way more exciting because, I mean, I was like a prop grinder, so I was playing 40 hours a week. Week after week after week of limit hold'em, stud 8, Omaha 8 or better. So it was a grind. And, we would see flops 5-6 ways. There were just mountains of yellow chips in the middle. And, it was just, okay, I'll play well and just hope my hand holds, against 4 people chasing.
Sure. That was limit hold'em back in the day, limit poker.
Right. And then I mean, there was an adjustment period when I started playing bigger and I started realizing I was like, okay, I'm playing a lot of heads up pots here. And I was like, okay, so the game is way different. I don't need to make hands. Right. And, I can actually fold in certain spots because I'm not getting 17-1.
Not getting 232-1 on this river.
Like I can fold a spot here. So that was one adjustment, just playing higher limit. And then no limit in the beginning was just kind of a revelation for me because first of all, it was fun. It was different. It's like, having sex with the same woman for 20 years and then suddenly being like, oh my God, there's somebody else out there. Not that I would be interested in that at all.
Sure.
But I'm just saying. No, I just think it was something different. It was really fun. It was exciting. And at that point, the game was just so ridiculously easy. I mean, it was like the point where like limped around pot, I'd be in the big blind with Jack Deuce. The flop will come out ace deuce deuce, and somebody would literally stack off with an ace.
Of course, yeah.
Like just like really basic, like so I was just like, oh, this is stupid. Like I didn't have to bluff ever, although it was fun too. I literally just made a hand and got paid. And got paid ridiculous amounts of money.
Right. I mean, nobody had any concept of like anything.
Yeah. I mean,
back when, no limit cash hit the streets.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I had this, I was already kind of a little bit intuitive. Like, I remember I got into one hand with a guy, like I get into a hand with a guy where like I had king, queen. And the flop comes out king, queen, 3. And the way the betting went on the flop was like bet, raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, all in. And I folded king, queen because I was like, well, he's either got the same hand as me or a set of 3s because there's nothing else he could possibly have. And he had ace, king. So there were already points where like I was like, okay, everybody's overplaying their hand. At this point, I wasn't really trying to figure out what people were trying to accomplish as much, which obviously is imperative when you're playing poker. But I just realized that everybody was overplaying certain hands. Like in that hand where I had Jack Deuce versus, I think the guy had, if I remember the hand correctly, he had ace 7, not even a good ace, on like an ace deuce deuce board. I remember like bet, raise, 3-bet. And as the money started pouring in, I'm just thinking to myself going, fuck, did he limp in with aces? Or does he have ace deuce? Like I thought I would lose. Right. I was like, wow. And he just kept pouring money in the pot. And I was like, okay. And then he showed like ace 7. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, it was really, really easy. I just remember thinking like my bad days when I was playing No Limit Hold'em back in like 05 and 06, my bad days were I'd lose like 2 buy-ins tops. My bad days playing limit, I could lose like 5 racks. Yeah.
Well, and I assume your good days were pretty good. And at some point, more education filters into the market, more people learn, card owners fires up, people are grinding online poker. Just the game gets a little bit more sophisticated, right? Like what did you use to learn and grow over the years, those early years playing the No Limit Cash streets?
I mean, I didn't do a ton in the beginning, and then I moved to London. And then when I moved to London, I played some online.
Why'd you move to London?
I moved to London. I had gotten a divorce, and I was dating a girl. And then I got a job offer to cover the NFL for Sky Sports. So I was like, cool, let's go. I mean, in fact, my girlfriend at the time was British, and I was living in LA, and we kind of were like, we wanted to be together. So we made the decision. I was like, okay, you look for a job in LA, I'll look for a job in London, whoever gets one first. And then I got this amazing offer to cover the NFL and NASCAR for Sky Sports. I was like, I'm going to London.
How'd you get that gig? I mean, that's a sounds like a pretty cushy gig.
Yeah. I mean, at this point I was broadcasting poker already. So I had gotten hired to do the $1 Million Cash Game. So I was commentating on that. And, I reached out to a couple of the directors and producers on that show. And I was like, hey, I'm looking to kind of come to London. Is there other work for me? And one of the directors, a guy named Martin Turner, who's like just a legendary director in the UK, he's like, you'd be great for the NFL. So he recommended me to the producer of the NFL at Sky, who I met with. He was like, I met with him for 12 minutes, and he was like, I love you. You're hired. And I was like, awesome, cool. And then 4 months later, he hired me to do the NASCAR as well, even though I didn't know a damn thing about NASCAR at the time. I had to learn.
You got time to learn. They drive in circles very, very often, and eventually they stop and somebody wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're about as qualified as I was at the beginning. So it's perfect. But yeah, so I went to London. I was playing online poker, and I was playing a little bit here and there. I was always doing poker commentary. So for me, a lot of my education was not only trying to keep up as a poker player, but I felt as a commentator that I needed to stay as relevant as possible. So I needed to know what was happening. And I surrounded myself with some like-minded individuals, whether it was the co-commentators I was working with, whether it was one of my best friends, Bart Hanson, and he and I would talk poker all the time. So a lot of it was just that. But I definitely, when I moved to London, I would say that my poker playing education level went down a little bit because I was broadcasting more and playing a lot less. I was playing online, but I was just like fucking around, I was like sitting in front of the couch, just playing a $3 sit and go or a $20, $20 MTT.
Yeah. You're learning about the left turn world.
Yeah. I was traveling a lot. I was going to see Italy, and I was going to, Kiev and all these wonderful places. So when I came back to LA, and I lived with Bart. So when I came back to LA, so it was LA, my second stint in LA, that was really my biggest learning. I came back to LA. I moved in with Bart Hanson.
Did the gig ended with the NFL and Sky Sports?
No, I probably could have kept it going. I actually kept going for a couple of years after that.
Mm-hmm.
But my work visa had run out. I could have gotten another one in all likelihood. But I think at this point in my life, my girlfriend and I had broken up, and I kind of had to decide. I lived there for a year after that as well. But I had to decide. My work visa was running out, and I had to decide, do I want to stay in London for the long haul, or do I want to come back? Do I want to be American and be here? And I just kind of realized, I was like, if I stay in London, I'm going to meet somebody here. I'm going to start a family here, and I'm never going to go back. And I kind of missed going to the bar at 9:00 and watching a baseball game.
What are some reasons to stay
I love London. I loved it. Honestly. I mean, you hear 7 different, if you go into town, right into central London, you hear 7 different languages in one day. The tube, I mean, I sold my car before I went there, and I didn't drive ever. The pub life, the old houses,
history.
I mean, it's such a green city too. I mean, there are so many amazing parks. You can bike, you can hike. The fact that you can literally jump on a $25 plane ride and go to Italy for a weekend. All those things were just so amazing. Obviously the pandemic stopped all that, but when I was there, that wasn't going on. I told people, I go, if the weather was even mediocre, because it's not, I probably would have stayed there forever. And I had a tough decision because I had really good friends there. I was on a hockey team out there. One of the guys on the hockey team, actually, the goalie, was trying to set me up with a girl. And I was like, dude, she's hot, but I want to be open with you. I want to be upfront. I think I'm moving back to LA. And he was like, oh. He's like, well, it's my wife's friend, so don't fuck her over. I was like, okay. I get it, man. I get it. But I was like, I mean, I had a life there. Sure. I had a place to live. I loved it. It's ridiculously expensive, and the weather is atrocious. Besides that, it's amazing. I love London.
Yeah. So LA is ridiculously expensive, but the weather's perfect. So,
but LA's not. I mean, LA's nothing compared to LA's everything compared to like the rest of America, but it's really cheap compared to London.
What's like a two bedroom apartment in London? What do you think?
To buy?
No, to just rent.
To rent like a 2-bedroom, like in the center of town.
Something comparable.
Okay, yeah. Like I'm saying, like if you were like in the center of town, like a 2-bedroom. I mean, I haven't been there in a while, but when I was there, and this is, I mean, you're talking. Okay, I had a place in Notting Hill, which is kind of a cool spot, right? Really cool little trendy area, sort of westish central London, and I was paying at the time I had a 1-bedroom, and I was paying £900 a week.
And a pound is like 2x.
At this point, it was like 1.5, 1.6
a week. So, whew, yeah, that's pretty pricey. It's like 6K US a month.
It was ridiculous, and you can definitely get cheaper than that. I know places that might be like $375 a week, but keep in mind, like $375 a week, it's still like, this was back then. That was like, $525 American. You're looking at like $2,200.
Is the rate of pay much higher there? I mean, to compensate?
I don't think so.
No. Ugh.
No, that was honestly one of it. I mean, I was like a presenter on Sky Sports, and like, maybe I was making enough money to eventually buy like a 1-bedroom in London.
Yeah, you're like on TV and like, maybe I'll be able to make my rent payment this week.
I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, London is like I said. I mean, LA is not cheap, but compared to London, it's like night and day.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy expensive.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But when I came back from London and I lived with Bart, and at this point, I was still doing some broadcasting, but not a ton. I was just going to start doing the World Series again, but that was only okay. That's during the summer. And Bart hadn't even started crushlivepoker.com yet. And we were like, I was doing a little bit of commentary here and there. I was doing some stuff for Poker Stars and stuff like that. I was covering like their W Coops and scoops and things like that, but I didn't have a ton else going on. So I was like, you know what? I'm in LA. Fuck it. I'll dive back into the poker scene. But I was like, well, I got to get better really quick. So Bart and I would just, we would have dinner and, we'd have beer and wine and just talk poker. And he had really immersed himself in the poker scene. When I went to London and I kind of focused on broadcasting, he really immersed himself in the poker scene. Like he just dove in. So he was a wealth of knowledge for me.
Yeah. So basically learned through conversations with Bart. And I mean, this is one of the best ways to learn anything, really. Just find somebody that's like where you want to be, that is also hungry and immerse themselves in the world, and just spend a lot of time with him discussing this thing that both of you love so much.
Yeah. And then as I jumped back into it and I started playing more, that was when I kind of made the bike my home. I mean, I was playing, Live at the Bike kind of started up again, and I got a job there doing like a little bit of commentary, but I was getting paid $25 an hour to just play off schedule whenever I wanted to. And I was like, okay, fuck it. I can play a ton of poker. So I was playing, 4 days a week. And then it was a good give and take because, then, Bart and I would sit and we'd talk poker, and he'd be like, what do you think of this line? And I would, and I always say that, you surround yourself with like-minded individuals and you're bound to get better. Yeah.
It's inevitable. I mean, and if you're not as obsessed with it as they are, then they'll stop coming around you. Like they'll stop having those conversations. Right.
Right.
Why the commentary? You mentioned you're a prop player playing limit. You love the strategy of the game. What got you into that world of the media side?
Honestly, it was kind of an accident. I mean, I studied broadcast journalism as well in school. It was one of my other, I liked it, but I remember talking to my dad about this, and he's like, Tuch, and he says straight out, my dad used to call me Tuch also. So, anyway, he'd just be like, unless you're an athlete, that is a really, really tough gig. And you'd be like, and you turn on any baseball game, football game, whatever it is, and it's always ex-athlete, one broadcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And the broadcaster, their lifespan, I mean, they could work it for 40 years. So, like, good luck replacing them.
Right.
You know? So it's a really tough gig. And my brother-in-law actually wanted to do that. He went to Syracuse. He went to the school in Newhouse and got an offer to like cover like a minor league, like A-level baseball team in like Iowa for, he was going to get paid like $11,000 a year. And my sister was like,
straight out of college. Wow. What a gig.
Yeah. But my sister was like, my sister was about to marry him. And she was like, she kind of put the next, she was like, I don't want to live in Iowa. And if you're making $11,000 a year, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
So, my brother-in-law and I are very different people, because I would have been like, let's do it. We're going to Iowa.
Don't buy a lot of shit. We're getting a horrible home.
Yeah. I mean, if he had that opportunity, instead he's a lawyer. I'm like, okay, you do you. But yeah, so anyway, so I had done some acting, and I had been on some shows, and I had some success as an actor. So I'd been in front of the camera, and I had done some writing and stuff like that. And this is 2004. I was propping at the bike, and they started a new show at the bike called Live at the Bike. And funny enough, Bart Hanson actually went to Syracuse and studied broadcast journalism. This is what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a broadcaster more than anything. And I was like, whatever. But they came to me, and they came to Bart, and they were like, hey, we think you guys would be really good at this. And I was like, huh? I'll give it a shot. Okay. But I was actually worried. I was like, well, how much am I going to, it's going to hurt my hourly, because I'm making money playing poker. But I did it anyway. And it kind of just took off from there, to be honest.
Yeah. Now you're one of the guys. You'll be in there 40 years, and everybody's like, hey, when's my turn? Sorry.
I kind of fell into it. Like, it was like they started this live stream on the internet before there really were any live streams on the internet. And I got in there, and I was very fortunate to be able to kind of suck for a long time, because, we didn't have a big audience in the beginning, and the production value was so bad in the beginning, and it's on the internet. It didn't make a difference that I was green.
Yeah.
Because everything was green about it. The whole thing was green. It was all, it was all raw.
People probably loved it regardless, just because it was just something new,
right.
People that stumbled on it.
And it kind of got a cult following, and they picked it up in Europe. And then Bart and I started we had to do like pickups, basically, because they'd package the shows. So they'd make, like, let's say we had a 4-hour show one night. They would edit it down to a 1-hour show. So Bart and I had to, like, in voiceover sessions in a sound studio, we would have to voice like in and outs of commercials, like, welcome back, or we'll be right back after this, whatever it might be. Or we'd be like, okay, well, we'd skip over a bunch of hands. So we'd jump ahead, and we have to explain that. So I kind of learned that world a little bit. So this was very much like, I got a lot of like on the job training, which if you go to broadcast school, you're paying, like, if you go to USC or Northwestern or Syracuse, you're paying $100,000 for the education that I got paid for.
Yeah. Can't beat that. And
I got very lucky.
And right place, right time.
Very much.
To move forward in poker broadcasting, because, I mean, who knew, right? Like, who knew that this was like going to be a big thing 5-10 years down the road?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I was there. Moneymaker just happened. Rounders just happened. I mean, the WPT on the Travel Channel was kind of taking over. Everybody loved that. So, there was a hunger and a thirst for another poker show. And then you combine that with the internet, which was still kind of in its infancy at the time. It was definitely a right place, right time situation.
Yeah. So you came back to LA. You're staying with Bart. You're learning, you're growing, you're discussing strategy. What was the major difference from like the time you were propping, playing No Limit in the beginning, to after Bart, when you were like, okay, like I've found my footing, you've advanced strategically, ready to battle in the poker world?
You mean in the games or in my own mentality?
Your own mentality, your own strategy, your own growth as a poker player.
When I came back, I remember Bart and I having a conversation, and it seems so ridiculously basic now. And it's over 10 years ago. So probably for now, it's definitely basic, but there was an epiphany in my poker game And Bart said it to me, and he just said, when you're betting, we're not betting to get information. I was like, okay, I got that. That I knew. I knew that was already 5 years ago. But he goes, we're betting when you're betting, you're either betting because you want to get value from a worse hand or you want to get a better hand to fold. That's it. He goes, very rarely are you betting for like equity protection. And I was like, but he said in Hold'em, we're not as worried about equity protection, but essentially he broke it down to very simple. We're betting to either get value from worse or to get better to fold. And it seems so ridiculously simple, but at the time, it was this eye-opening epiphany for me in my game.
People still struggle with this today. They still struggle. They will like turn middle pair and it's checked to them and they'll just like bet pot. And I'm like, why? Why did you do this thing? Like,
and that's the biggest thing. I remember Phil Galfond tweeted about this a few years ago, and he just said, if you really want to work on your poker game, the first thing you can ask yourself, why are you betting? Why are you putting chips in the pot? What are you trying to accomplish? And then obviously there's you can peel back the onion and there's so many other stories, if you try to figure out what's my opponent trying to accomplish and everything. But that simple phrase that Bart taught me just made so much sense. And it got me to the point where I was like, because I would say before that, there were points where I would make the mistake where I was betting because I was afraid if I checked, I didn't know what my opponent was going to do. I'd be like, I don't know. And then I just stopped and I just breathe and I go, okay, this is my hand. This is my range. My opponent's hand, my opponent's range. And I go, okay, well, if I'm betting here, am I betting for value or am I betting as a bluff? What am I trying to do here? What am I trying to get to fold? What am I trying to get value from? From that first leaping off point that I learned from Bart many, many years ago, I was able to take that and go pretty far. And I mean, the bike game, I crushed for years. I was playing full-time, just 5-5, by the way. And the game was so good because there was no regular 5-10 game at the bike. So none of the pros would come out. None of the, commerce pros would come out because they didn't want to play 5-5 because it was beneath them. And they all have egos. So I was playing in this 5-5, 300 to 1,000 game. Now, when I first got there, it was only a $500 buy-in game, but I convinced them to make it a $1,000 game 100% for selfish reasons. I fed them all this bullshit about, the game is better. Da, da, da. It was all because I wanted it to be bigger. So I got this game to go. It was a $300 to $1,000 buy-in, 5-5 game. You could straddle if you wanted to. And because there was no 5-10 game, none of the top pros came in. And the bike for a few years was my absolute, I felt like the king of I was just like the king shark there. No, these are all mine. I'd have pros leaving my table because they didn't want to play with me. But I'm not going to sit there and tell I was the best poker player in the world or anything like that. But I would say that at that level, against that competition, I don't know how many other players were going to make more money than I was making. For a few years, I was making about $100 an hour, a little bit over $100 an hour playing 5-5.
Yeah, that's real good. I think the upper reaches of 5-5 these days, probably something like 50, maybe 65 if you're like world class and have like an especially juicy pool to draw from.
Right.
It's funny in poker, like you have options for actions to take. You can check and you can call and you can bet and you can raise. And you have to understand that we have all these tools to work with and they all have utility in different spots. So you need to understand like how to use them. Like everything is not a bet, right? Like sometimes you just check and then you call and bluff catch because it has a specific utility based on the situation that you're in. And somewhere along the way in poker training or something, just the conventional wisdom was just be betting or raising and never calling or checking and just be betting, raising or folding. And like, it's so wrong and it's so bad and it's hurt so many people's poker career. The truth is it's a messy game. It's hard and you got to figure some stuff out and you got to figure out when to check and when to call.
Yeah. I think it's something that I definitely struggled with in the beginning. And I think I see a lot of amateurs and a lot of inexperienced players kind of make that mistake where they just, they feel like, well, if I don't bet here, how am I going to win the pot? what's my path to victory?
Right.
And I think, first off, I mean, number one, you don't need to win every hand.
Yeah, that's not the point of the game, is not to win every pot. The point of the game is to make the most money.
Right. So, I mean, first off, you don't need to win every hand. And number two, there's a lot of other ways, like, and you kind of seen that, and you've seen that with some, players over the years, whether it's a delayed C bet, whether it's checking back and then raising turn, whether, there's a different, checking back 2 streets and then going for value on the third, on the river. I think that's probably, and the funny thing is when I do commentary, I think I often see that as well, where so I can see the cards, and yet sometimes I don't know if they're bluffing or value betting.
Well, that's probably good because they don't know either, right?
Like they don't know, and I'm just going, I think this is I don't know what he's doing.
High level commentary, but spot on. Because how could we know?
But it's really weird because I can see the cards, and you're just thinking, and you're going, okay, well,
yeah. Well, the player that's playing the hand can see the cards too, and they don't know either. So, it's just a mystery. And
even today, by the way, I mean, I commentate on a local live stream called Hustler Casino Live, which is amazing. If anybody wants to check out a great live cash game.
Yeah, tiny local stream that's going to have Phil Ivey on, I think, tonight.
Right. I shouldn't say it's tiny anymore. It's enormous. They're crushing. But I've been commentating on that, and I can't tell you. There was a hand the other night I was commentating on where it was like one of the guys had King 8 of clubs, the other one had Ace King. Right. The King 8 of clubs was out of position. The flop is like King Jack 4, 2 diamonds. Okay, no clubs. The King 8 of clubs check raises the flop. Like, okay, yeah. Then check calls turn. And then on a river blank, he leads out huge. I think backdoor spades got there. Like, I think it was like King Jack 4, 2 diamonds, 1 spade. Turn is maybe like, the 7 of spades, and the river is like the deuce of spades.
Mm-hmm.
And King 8 then, and on the river, I was trying to think, I was like, is he turning his hand into a bluff? Is he trying to rep backdoor spades?
Has to be, right? You have to be.
I don't think so. That's the thing. I mean, that would make more sense.
Yeah, I would think that like check raise, check line, maybe you can say that you structure it in a way that you have like lots of backdoor spades, even though if you do check raise and turn backdoor spades, you're probably betting the turn. So like check raise, check call doesn't make a lot of sense if you're trying to rep backdoor spades.
I mean, I was trying to, I mean, as a general rule of thumb, when I'm doing commentary, I try not to climb inside somebody's head because I can't guess what they're thinking. But I did try to think of this hand that I was like, okay, well, I'm probably not check raising with King 8 of clubs on this particular texture very often. But I said, as played, I go, if he wants to represent backdoor spades, I go, check raising the river would be pretty sexy. Like check jamming river.
Yeah. I think river's probably going to go check a lot. Might be. I think the problem is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the strategy of it. The problem is if you check raise with a backdoor flush draw, like some sort of like ace, queen, ace 10 of spades, and you turn the spade, you're mostly going to continue barreling. You're not going to just start check calling. So like repping the backdoor flush is very not credible to me. No matter what they do, really.
Yeah. I mean, the king on the board was not the spade.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when he did lead out big on the river, the player with ace king did stop for a second and go like, did you hit your spade here?
Right before they called.
Right, exactly. Before they took 11 seconds and said, okay.
Right before they put the money in and won the pot. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's the good news about live poker, right? Live poker is alive and well, and I think that at most stakes around the world, you can still study up if you're committed to being a winning poker player and be a winner in live cash games.
Yeah.
Just because
I've been hearing for years. I remember when I came back from London, everybody told me, Tuch, the games are tougher now. Okay. And I was like, okay. And I went in and I was like, they still seem pretty. And then I've been hearing this for years, like, oh, the game's dead. It's so hard now. It's so hard now. And I'm not going to say that the games aren't tougher now than they were, but I still see a lot of really bad poker players playing poker.
Even the online games are very beatable. You know, a student of mine started playing online poker a year ago. He co-hosts Tactical Tuesday with me and basically moved up to 510 NL within 6 months from 100 no limit, and has had himself mid 6-figure year battling in cash games, and like that's the reality, or maybe low 6-figure year, but either way, a pretty damn good year for somebody that previously hasn't played online poker. So like, it's a thing that can be done if you put your nose to the grindstone and you try and you do the work. But if you ask somebody playing live poker, like a live pro, how the online poker world is, they'll just be like, nah, they're killers. Everybody's a killer and you can't beat it. But like, that's not the fucking truth.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, unfortunately, as I live in LA, I don't play online poker very often these days, but
yeah, it's just everybody makes things out to be harder than they are, just in every facet of life. I've found, like, I release 4 podcasts a week, like 4, and people are like, that's insane. And it's like, they struggled to release like 1 every 2 weeks. But I mean, it's not that hard having good conversations with interesting human beings multiple times a week. Like, to me, it's pretty fun.
Well, I'll give you extra credit for today, though, since you're doing it with a less than interesting person. So well done, you. I think 4 podcasts a week is hard. So, I mean, listen, if you dedicate yourself and you want to do it, you can do it. But I give you credit for that because I put out 1 podcast every 2 weeks, and sometimes, because I want to make sure that they're all compelling. Sometimes they're difficult.
Yeah, you got to pay. I just pay the money for production. Like, here, take money, make this look good. Take out me sounding like an idiot. Like today, for instance, I am not on my A game. I'm like, I think I got 4 hours of sleep and just not feeling all there.
Not feeling it.
Nah, not feeling it. But fuck it, man. The show must go on.
Hey, listen, that's a true pro. And knowing your B game is better than most people's A is probably good. So there you go.
I don't know that, but I'll accept the compliment, Tuch. I don't know that for sure. Let's move to the lightning round. Let's move to the lightning round, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay.
So if you could gift all poker players 1 book to read, and does not have to be about poker, what would it be?
Lightning round. I just read a book called Deep Survival.
I haven't heard of it. What's it about?
It is by Lawrence Gonzalez. It is about the human race and how it's about human beings and how some people seem to survive certain moments and some don't, and where your brain goes in moments of crises. And I was recommended to me, and I read it in a day and a half. I could not put it down. And it is, I think, for poker players who we all know, how there are certain poker players out there. This is not really a lightning, I know, but there are certain poker players out there that just seem to like always hit. They always do well, and you're like, how's that guy? And I think they have this. So I think whether you're a poker player, I think you're just a human being. It's a great book. It's again, it's right behind me. The Deep Survival by Lawrence Gonzalez.
Yeah, that sounds like a compelling book, and it's something that I've actually spent a fair amount of time thinking about. How Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, about the Holocaust and his experience going through the Holocaust, and how he went through it and came out like a transcendent human being through that horrible experience, right? And it's always stuck with me that like some people can go through these awful events and somehow just come out changed, and I'm not going to say better for it, but different and still resilient, and not just a total mess of a human being.
Yeah, I'll read just a couple things for you guys really quick. So like here, just a couple of excerpts here. Like, this book will help you should you ever find yourself pinned under a rock in a roaring whitewater river, but it will also help you if you ever find yourself wondering why your brain works the way it does under the stress of everyday life. Basically, Deep Survival: Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why.
Nice. I'm gonna pick it up. I need a good immersive day and a half read about something interesting. If you could wave a magic wand, change one thing about the world of poker, what would you change?
Man, if I could wave a magic wand and I could change one thing, I would make cash games 8-handed. I'm sure I could come up with lots of better things, but on the spot, and if I could just do one thing right now, I would make cash games all 8-handed. Whether it's I don't want or lower.
Yeah,
No
why not
9-handed,
six-handed?
no 9-handed, no 10-handed.
Let's add an ante in there too. Let's add an ante.
I'm fine with that, but in minimum, no, I never want more than 8 people in my game.
Yeah, not even if it's the VIP, making it 10-handed.
No, then get rid of somebody else.
Just kick somebody out of the game.
Or
get the hell out of here.
Or make it 2 5-handed games.
All right, that's fair. I don't want to play 9-handed personally, or 10-handed. Yeah. God forbid. That's like the worst of the worst. But yeah, I'm down for all 8-handed or 6-handed games. If you could put up a billboard, every poker player's got to drive past on the way to the casino. What's your billboard say?
Don't punch down. Don't be nice to people. There's a saying, and it's kind of a weird saying, like don't punch down. It implies that like a dealer is below you, which they're not. But what I read from that is, somebody told me this many years ago, and it makes a lot of sense. What it means to me is more of, if somebody is in the customer service business, they're a dealer, they're a waiter, they're a bartender, so they're in a position where they can't fight back. They can't, because they'll lose their job.
Yeah.
Don't treat them like they're below you. You know?
Oh, for sure. And I just had Jan Fisher on the podcast.
I love Jan.
Yep. And she was telling stories about dealing in the late 70s and the 80s, and how it was not a good situation for dealers, even amongst, some of the more prominent poker players of the day who were, in your words, punching down. And yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Some people that most likely me coming up in the poker world thought of as heroes, not acting so heroic to their fellow human beings.
Yeah, I genuinely think it's disgusting. I remember I went on a date with a girl when I first moved to LA who treated the waiter in a quite a rude way. And I basically ended the date like 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
I was like, you just treated somebody you don't even know like that. I was like, I've seen all I need to say. To me, I'd like people to treat others really nice, treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. But when somebody is in a vulnerable position and they literally can't do anything except just take it.
Yeah.
For you to take advantage of that is just like, it's disgusting. I have no respect for it whatsoever.
Yeah, it's not good. It's certainly, it's just really not good.
It's not even just like, and some people are like, well, it's bad business and it makes the game less friendly and all these things. Yeah, it's also just, it's a fellow human being. Why are you being a dick?
Absolutely. And also another thing is, like, good players should know fucking better than to blame somebody who's randomly shuffling a deck for a river card. Like, get the fuck out of here, person. Like, you just got to know better that this person's not coming out after you. And quite frankly, if they could, they probably would. But they can't. This is just like the game and the way that we make our living. It's just absurd to me.
Yeah, it is absolutely absurd. But it's even if you're not a professional, though, I don't like, even if you're not smart enough to realize that the dealer can't have any control over it. If you really think that dealer's unlucky for you, that's fine. That's fine. You still don't have to. There's still no reason for you to treat them badly. Yeah, I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying, like, the people that ought to know better. That's just it's just I don't know. It just gets to me. How'd you feel? My billboard.
Cool. How'd you feel? We've gone. I know it's been talked about ad nauseum, but like, what about somebody that's like punching not down, but maybe sideways, like the Phil Helmy tirade on Zeno the other day? What do you think about that?
I think he crossed the line. Obviously, I know Phil. I like Phil.
Yeah.
I think he crossed the line. I think I get you're frustrated. I get it's emotional. I get you're pouring everything into it. I understand that. I think people took the, I'm going to burn the Rio down. think they took that a little too literal because
I thought it was a good line personally.
People have been saying that for years.
Of course.
People have been saying that for years. It's like, whatever, I mean, like, it's like, the same people like, you can't say bomb in an airport. Bomb. I can say what a bomb, bomb. Like, just like stupid. Like that didn't bother me, but like the 19th fuck was a bit much. And I think Phil just has to realize that whether he wants it or not, and he clearly does want it, he is one of the faces of poker. He's representing our game. And I don't think that was bad for the game, so to speak, because, it's still publicity, but it's just like I said, I mean, the first two, fine. Like 20 minutes into it, you're still going on like, okay, come on, dude.
Yeah. It's like I think it was a Chris Rock stand-up where he said, like, that tiger didn't go crazy. That tiger went tiger. Like, Phil Hellmuth, he didn't go crazy. Phil Hellmuth just went Phil Hellmuth. That's what he does. But I do think he like juices it up specifically, maybe for production on the back end. I think
it's real. I think
it's all real. It's not.
I know him. I know him, and I think it's real. I think I think it's real. I think it's a persona that's been developed through the years. But I think at this point, you could almost like, if you tell lies long enough, it becomes who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's who he is now. I think he went too far. I think he knows it. I don't think the players at the table really cared.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Ant Zeno about it or not, but I don't think Zeno gives. I don't think he cared. I think if anything, he was kind of laughing at it. But, it was, he definitely crossed the line. He went too far. There's this far, you can kind of like take a step and then you can get to like the Helmuthian line, which is okay for Phil. But then he went like 4 steps past the Helmuthian line. So
4 steps past the Helmuthian line.
Right.
All right.
Like a book.
Oh God, it's going to be after positivity, 4 steps past the Helmuthian line.
Right.
What's a project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
I don't know if there's a project that I'm working on. Like I said, I'm coaching my kids' hockey team, and that's right now.
That's near and dear to your heart.
I love it. I know, but I don't know if it's a project, so to speak, but it's. I mean, I love it. I've got a co-coach that I work with, and we develop practices, and we talk, and we work with these kids, and I just love it. I mean, there's every aspect about it that I get on the ice with these kids, and I get to work with them on going from like young kids into like young boys and girls and become better people and obviously and work on their games. I every part about it. I love it. It's something that it's something that I want to do the rest of my life for sure. I just got back into it. I really just got back into it with my kid playing again and just realized how much I love it.
Yeah, I'm jealous. My kids don't care much for sports, 2 girls. And, I'm not jealous of the boys for 99%, but the one competitive aspect growing up an athlete and loving strategy and competition, I am a little sad that not getting to coach the kids. They have very limited interest in sports, sadly.
Yeah. I don't know if I forced it on him or not, but now that he's getting better, he kind of likes it.
I can say this. Nobody forced anything on me. Like, I would be like, give me a tennis ball in the backyard. I'm throwing it against the wall like all day long at 6 years old, like 7, like just all day long. Let's throw a ball. Let's play. Let's find the neighborhood kids and play soccer, football, baseball, whatever it was. That's just how I am as a human.
I like it.
All right, man. With that said, all about me. Let's shut this down. And if the Chasing Poker Greatness listener wants to learn more about you on the World Wide Web, where should they go?
I guess you can go to my website, which is tuchonsports.com. There's some awful pictures in there. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram at tuchonsports. Or just ask me, or I can come back on the show, or they could ask you. And then you could have me back on the show and you could ask me.
Perfect.
That works too.
I got my own questions. They can ask you somewhere else. I got my own.
That works
Hopefully,
too.
next time I'll have a full night's sleep and have full access to all my cognitive faculties. But it's been great conversation, man. Really enjoyed having you on, and we'll run it back again sometime in the near future. And whenever I make it out to Vegas, if you're in Vegas, let's go get a drink or something.
I would absolutely love that, and keep doing what you do, man. You're doing great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.